We are live here, so we are not going to waste anybody's time. We're going to jump straight into our presentation and really just a good, honest, powerful discussion here today. So, guys, I'm excited here to lead you through this, and I'm accompanied by one of our lead business coaches, Lance, here as well. But what we're going to be talking about today is we're going to have just honestly, just a real honest and raw conversation here about some of the issues that are going on in the industry, but also too, how to get the best interest rate to secure your line of credit in challenging markets. Now, the reason that this is a relevant topic, we didn't just pull something, out of a hat and decide, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. We wanted to bring something that's relevant to the issues that everybody's facing today. And this is backed up by all the customers and everybody we've been meeting with over several months here as people are getting prepared going into 2025, guys. So as we're jumping into our discussion here, let me make sure my slides and everything are working. A little bit of background on me, guys. My name is Jace Young. I'm the founder and CEO of Legacy Farmer. I started this company back in 2019, and even going further back in my story there, I actually grew up on a multi-million-dollar family farm operation in Western Kansas. Some of you guys watching this are going to know exactly where it was at and what the family story was. But it's our feed yard was located north of Tribune, Kansas, about 15 miles. Had several thousand acres of ground, but I grew up on our feed yard and feedlot side of the operation. Our feedlot held about 14,000 head of cattle, and I grew up working cattle my entire life. Unfortunately, though, in the summer of 2005, I was still in high school at the time, and unfortunately witnessed the entire thing go bankrupt. Now, this was obviously a huge thing for me and a big part of the story, and really it's the backbone to Legacy Farmer and everything that we do here. But unfortunately, I had to witness my parents file Chapter 7 bankruptcy. I had to witness them get kicked out of a house that they raised their family in for 30 years. I was with them going through that, and it was such a good experience. Looking back on it, it was a blessing in disguise because it made me really grow up really fast and recognize what's at risk for these family farm operations. Now, following that experience, I actually spent 6 years as an ag loan officer. Now, this was a really important part of my journey, strictly because now I got to see the financial side of these operations, right? Growing up on the operation, I got to experience and witness and feel all the emotions, all the struggles that come when running an operation and working with family in the operation there, and the fights, the resentment, the challenges, everything that takes place there. But also too, though, going into the bank now, I got to see the financial decisions that were being made, specifically even inside of our operation, and just the lack of financial knowledge, education, and access to information, specifically my granddad had at that time and my parents had at that time and things there. So that was a very important part of my story here as well that led us to create Legacy Farmer. Now, I left that career in 2016 and I struggled for a few years. I was trying to figure out what my pathway was going to be to actually step in and be able to help farmers and ranchers and really be able to impact this industry that I grew up in and people that I care about. But also too, that was a really painful time that I had to go through. I feel like God put me through that for a specific reason, because I had to become the person that could ultimately lead from a place of confidence and power, and from a place of, hey, we're on a mission here and we need to accomplish it and we need to do whatever needs to be done in order to help these families and help these operations. Because my family, witnessing them go through losing everything, they're one of several hundred per year. Right. And this is going to continue to happen. And this industry is going to continue to be impacted by these types of problems. So like I said, I left that career in 2016 and been helping farmers master their finances and build a great business with Legacy Farmer since 2019. And when I launched the company, everything really took off from the get-go. But one fun fact about me, guys, and I say this to a lot of people, is I was a bad banker. Now, what do I mean by that? Doesn't mean that I didn't know finances, doesn't mean that I didn't know loans and strategy and all that type of stuff there. It means that sitting across a table from customers, I was caught in this conflict between doing what's right for the bank and doing what's right for the customer. And I could never find myself leaning towards doing what's right for the bank, because I was told by my bosses at that time that, we're supposed to disclose and not disclose certain information to the customer and things like that. But the problem was, though, is that all my customers sitting across the table from them, honestly, I saw my parents, right? These people that were making massive financial commitments and decisions that ultimately did not know the severity of the decisions they were making, right? There was too much at risk. There was too many unknowns there for these financial decisions that they were making. So that's why I say I was a bad banker there at that point. I just couldn't get on the side of the bank. I'd rather be on the side of the customer and making sure that we're protecting their interest, which is obviously just so happens to be exactly what we do inside of Legacy Farmer as well. Like I said, I got one of our lead business coaches here with me, Lance. Lance, I'll let you take the talk here and share a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Thanks, Jace. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here with you guys today. My background's a little different than Jace's. My family was a couple generations removed from the family farm. I tell everybody the farm stayed the same size. The family kept getting bigger, so it couldn't sustain a living. However, I grew up working on irrigation wells and center pivots out in West Texas, west of Lubbock, and in a little town called Levelland. Got really connected to the industry. My family had a real estate brokerage. I got to see firsthand a lot of the struggles that were what's going on in the region. Got a passion for agriculture and went off to Sam Houston State and did my undergrad in ag business. Did well enough, went on to Oklahoma State where I got my master's in ag econ. While I was there, I had an opportunity to go to Washington, D.C., work with the House Committee of Agriculture on what was supposed to be the 2011 Farm Bill. As y'all know, there is no such thing as a 2011 Farm Bill because it didn't happen until 2014. Nevertheless, it was a great experience. I learned a lot about American policy, enough to say that I didn't want anything to do with our politics. And I came back feeling like more than ever that the system was attacking the American producer. And I wanted to get in a role where I could be a facilitator of the growth in the industry and help keep us as the world's number one food superpower. So I refocused my efforts, actually spent a semester in the PhD program before I left and got what I call in a term of endearment sucked into banking. And I was with Bravo AgriFinance before I went on to Farm Credit for a while. Spent some time with some commercial banks. So I got a lot of experience. I was in banking for most of 11 years and met with a lot of customers. Kind of an interesting thing is I always enjoyed working with my customers. I hated working with other bankers and the bureaucracy that came with it. I was kind of a misfit, had a lot of success with my producers, but always felt like there was something different. So that's how I ended up here at Legacy, and I have a similar passion as Jace does for the industry.
Yeah, Lance, would you say, have you noticed like there's a commonality between the type of people that are attracted to legacy farmers, specifically bankers? Like, just like you use the term misfit there, 100% describes me in that place as well, right? So stuck in this
Yep.
conflict of doing what's best for the bank and doing what's best for the customer. And I just naturally gravitated towards doing what's best for the customer just because of my experiences of what I witnessed my parents go through.
Certainly. I absolutely agree. And I used to say to a lot of my people and a lot of people I worked with that I'm not a banker. I'm an agriculturist. It just so happens to be good with numbers. And
Yeah.
so I didn't want to be grouped with these people because I didn't share their passion or their ideology. And I feel like a lot of our customers are in a similar situation. They're really strong in their certain areas and they need to be built up and they're looking for what's next that's going to bring them to the next level. They know where they need to do, and we're here to help with that.
Yep, absolutely. All right, guys. So we'll jump into the rest of our discussion here and everything here. Now, getting started with this, guys, there's a specific framework and everything that I always like to follow here to kind of give you just a quick viewpoint into what we're talking about, why we're talking about it. So everything I'm going to go through, there is a specific reason for that. We're going to start off with the problem. And these are the hard truths that a majority of people inside of the ag industry, honestly, they just want to avoid. Now, problem number one here that we want to talk about is most farmers today feel completely owned by their bank. And what do I mean by that? We are in a time where you are continuing to have to pledge more and more collateral, give up more of your hard-earned assets in order to get financing going forward. I don't think it's any secret that banks are scared about the future of what we're going to face here in ag, and they are requiring more collateral, aka they want your hard-earned real estate in order to secure operating loans because of the risk that we are currently facing. And this is what I mean by most farmers today feel completely owned by the bank, because the reality is they are, right? They absolutely are. And ultimately, too, this also leads people to feeling like a child going in to ask their parents for permission to buy something. Now, this is not something I created. I literally had a customer come in and tell me this, that they felt like a 2-year-old going in and sitting with their parents, asking if they could get a loan to buy this or buy that and things like that. Now, the thing is, though, is as a grown man, as a business owner, how does that make you feel having to go in and feel that way? And sit there and ask and be talked down to like a toddler and told what you can and can't do and that type of crap there. That's the type of stuff that I could never do to customers, right? There was a level of respect that I had for these people because on the back end, I knew the level of stress and weight and anxiety and things that they were feeling when it came to making these big financial decisions. And guys, just so you know, your bankers don't really understand that. And I'm not knocking bankers. This is not a workshop to do that. I'm not talking about that. I'm just saying the game that you guys are playing as ag business owners is completely different from the person sitting on the other side of that table inside of that bank. And ultimately then they are or they like, let's see. get in trouble if they lost money. Okay, yeah. So you step into the bank here, and this is something we're experiencing right now going into 2025 as well, is a lot of people, they're having to refinance losses sitting on their operating line. Lance has talked to several customers coming in to Legacy Farmer where we're having to go through and actually help them restructure their loans. But the thing is, though, is they have this massive fear on exactly what the bank's going to say. And a lot of people, unfortunately, I don't care how big your balance sheet is, a lot of people are extremely nervous whether or not they're going to get renewed going into 2025, which is why we picked this topic to talk about right now. Because most people, if you haven't been renewed yet for your operating line, you're going to be renewed in probably the next 2 or 3 months. And ultimately, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stress, there's a lot of anxiety and stories that come with that. If you know that, hey, we lost money last year and we're going to have to go through a restructure, this is why I'm talking about you feel like you're getting in trouble here with your banker. Most farmers don't know how the game of ag banking is played, so they get taken advantage of. And what I mean by this, and Lance, I'll let you speak on this too, most of the customers, guys, I would say more than 90% that come into Legacy Farmer, once we help them get their numbers structured and organized, we quickly discover that their numbers are not structured the right way. Right. And what I mean by that is on their balance sheet, loans are not structured the right way, in a way that's going to benefit and help the customer get cash, ultimately cash flow through these tough years. Lance, what's been your experience with that, seeing customers come in and helping them get their finances structured and organized?
Absolutely. A lot of it comes from bad advice from their banker. It's the way they acquire assets. It's the way they grow. If the banker's not proactive, we see a lot of carryover debt carried from year to year. It's never done anything with. So eventually they run out of line. They can't operate. We also see cattle and equipment purchases put on their line of credit. Obviously, this is also the place where you don't want to put most of your debt because it's on a variable interest rate. And so in our environment that we've just experienced over the last 24, 36 months, that we've seen a massive run up in interest rates. So the first thing to take that impact is your operating line, where if we would have got that locked down in the years that it occurred, then we would have been at a lot lower cost of funds. Cost of money is a serious issue. And if you don't have a proactive banker helping you understand these things, that's a problem. And a lot of bankers don't want to get in the weeds. They're not encouraged or incented to do so.
Yeah, they're exactly right. Show me the incentives and I'll show you the result. Right.
Yep,
So, and
absolutely.
bankers are not incentivized to be looking at your guys' balance sheets and ultimately your entire business multiple times per year. They get your renewal done. They look at things there. They close the file. They put it in the drawer, and we're not looking at it again until December, January next year. Right. And that's obviously a massive problem there because you guys are making decisions, hundreds, if not thousands of them throughout the year. Your balance sheet is fluctuating up and down. These things are being impacted. And if you don't have somebody there that's watching all this stuff and helping you ultimately make sure you're making the right decisions throughout the year and not going to be looking back after the year is over full of regret there, that's obviously an issue there. The number one thing here, though, too, guys, when we talk about balance sheets not being structured correctly, in a high interest rate environment like we're currently living in, one of the things that enrages not only us, but also to our customers is when they walk in to Legacy Farmer, we start getting their numbers structured and organized. Working capital, which we'll talk about some of these ratios here and everything later, working capital is in a terrible position. But then we start digging into, well, what purchases are on your operating line of credit? And then all of a sudden we find out that the cattle purchases are on there or that equipment purchases are on there from 21 or 2022. The reason this is enraging for people is because if your loans would have been structured the right way, I get maybe when you bought that piece of equipment, your banker said, hey, just put it on your operating line and then we'll term it out later. But they didn't do that. They never did. So now you're paying 7%, 8% on your operating note for a piece of equipment that you could have locked in at 4% or 3.5% back in 21 and 22. And for the price of equipment today, that tallies up to tens of thousands of dollars a year in interest that people are paying, that if they would have just been watching their numbers or had their banker watching their numbers, like they honestly should be, in my opinion, and that's where me and Lance really connect on that type of stuff, shouldn't have had to incur that additional interest expense. But ultimately, guys, here we talk about not knowing the game that ag bankers are playing ultimately. And in any competition, what's the quickest way to defeat your opponent? And in this context here, the opponent is the bank. You have to know their game plan, right? You have to know how the bank is taking your information, what they're using it for, and how they're ultimately using it to determine your interest rates, structure your loans, and ultimately determine what level of service you're getting from the bank as well. And when you know the other team's game plan, ultimately the game is over, right? And this is a huge issue for our customers here at Legacy Farmer because again, we go back to walking into the bank and feeling like a toddler having to walk in there. But guys, when you know how the other team is playing the game, you ultimately steal all the control, all the leverage, all the power that they have in that conversation and in that room as well. And that's ultimately what we're trying to give people inside a legacy farmer, and specifically people that use our software farmer metrics. We want people to have that level of financial certainty. We want them to have that confidence walking into that place there so that they're running the conversation, not being told what they can and cannot do. But the secret here is, go guys, the problem actually grows 10 times bigger from here, because at the end of the day, when you feel owned by the bank or are not on top of your finances the way you should be, and those of you that are listening to this right now or listening to the recording, you know who you are. You know if there's gaps in your finances. You know if there's a level above the way you're currently operating right now, where you could be on top of your numbers 10 times more than what you are. But when you don't have this in place, though, how does that show up inside of your body? And this is where I'm talking about the problem is getting 10 times bigger. Lance, what has been your experience here working with customers? Can you see it in people's body when you get on the first call with them and you know that they're not where they want to be financially? Can you actually see that in their face and see it in their body language and things like that there as well?
Absolutely. And I'll bring up a couple points. When I was a banker, you could see the lack of confidence. And unlike some people that would have taken advantage of that, it made me uneasy because I knew, here we go, we're going to have to dig in. They probably don't know what they've actually produced in terms of profit and a balance sheet over the last 10 years. And I'm going to have to spend a good amount of time just doing inventory for them to get their stuff up to speed. I have an example of a customer that actually came in to Legacy Farmer. And whenever we got him, he's extremely profitable, but he's so involved in every little element of his business, he's starting to have heart issues. And because of that, it's taking him away from being the dad and the husband that he wants to be, and it's also affecting the way runs his business. And I had to draw the analogy, like, uh, if the CEO of Tyson went on the deboning line, what would that do to the whole operation?
Mm-hmm.
These are the type of questions that gain clarity once you get a good handle on your finances.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. Now, the next piece here from body, right? You can actually physically see it on people, right? And I can tell right away, just seeing somebody on camera or meeting somebody in person, whether or not they're dealing with a ton of stress and a ton of anxiety, because it literally shows in their body language. It shows physically, it shows in every aspect of your body. But the next piece here, though, let me get my slides working. Next piece here, though, is when you feel owned by the bank and are not on top of your finances, how does that show up in your mindset? Right. And the reason I ask this question is because when we get to the end of the year, right, typically end of the year or right now, there's two things people are worried about. End of the year, now they're starting to think about all the mistakes they made throughout the year, right? All the what ifs. Where am I going to be at financially? Am I going to be profitable? Am I going to have a tax bill? Where the heck am I going to be at? And now we're getting into this time frame here, end of February, going into March. Man, is the bank going to renew me? Right. And isn't that such a crappy place to be in a position where everything about the future of your operation and your success is really dependent upon other variables like the bank that you will never control. You'll never control what's said in that room. Now, can you influence it? Absolutely. But will you ever control? No. And that's just a feeling of weakness there. And guys, I share that too, because as a man, and speaking from a man's perspective, I think we have all been through times in our life where we were not providing for a family at the level we knew we were capable of. And man, I don't know about you, Lance, but I felt like the biggest POS during that time. I felt like an absolute failure. I felt like, man, I should be able to provide such a better life for my family there. But unfortunately, I wasn't in the position to do it. And those stories there that are running through your mindset, man, they're either positive or they're negative. But for most people right now, they're negative, and it's ultimately sending them down a path they don't want to go. Lance, any examples of this?
I think you're spot on, and the bad thing about our industry too is that mindset just compiles and it's a cumulative effect.
Mm-hmm.
Once you head down that path, then it just gets out of control. Farmers are horrible about asking for help when they get to that spot, and really the only way to start down that path is start at the core of the problem, which
Yeah.
I always go back. You need to know your balance sheet. You need to know your cash flow. We start unweaving that, then things get a little clearer. You get a little more comfort. You can let a little pressure off. So it's a stepping process, like eating an elephant, one spoonful at a time.
Yep. Why do you think farmers are, by themselves scared of asking for help? Why do you think that was ingrained in us at such a young age?
I think it was a generational thing, definitely passed on. And I think that the day and time of we're the business owners. We don't want to share any information with anybody because we think they're going to take advantage of us. The reality is, by not doing and not keeping a clear picture, the exact opposite has happened. Now we're getting taken advantage of because we can't tell people what our business is doing. And so I think it's an old mindset that's probably not a good mindset, especially in a world where the competition and the variability is higher than ever.
Yeah. And the other point here I'd add, guys, and this again is just from years of doing this, people that come in, one of the natural things for, again, speaking from a man's perspective, is fear of being exposed. Right. Because when you're exposed here, the thing is, like, when you come in and like with our customers, we're getting them structured and organized financially. Well, the finances tell a story. The finances also expose all the bad decisions that have been made over the past 10 years. Right. And the people, though, that fear that exposure, those are the guys that never ask for help. And they're going to wait till the thing burns down to the ground before they can do anything. My granddad was an example of that. But for the people that actually have the courage and want to find the problems, want to expose the problems, the secret in life, guys, for me, especially at the point that I'm at, is you exposing those areas. Finding exposure is where all growth happens, because finding exposure highlights the problems and puts your focus on the problems. Once we have the problems here in a list, now all of a sudden we can create a plan and a path to move forward. But if you're too fearful of being exposed, man, you may be stuck in the cycle that you're in forever, or until one day you literally can't finance the operation anymore and it's over, right? Which is obviously what we experienced in my family there. Okay, moving on to next slide here. So now, next point here, when you feel owned by the bank or not on top of your finances the way you should be, how does that show up in your marriage and key relationships? I can only tell you guys, obviously, watching my parents go through this experience there of having to file bankruptcy and things like that. You guys want to talk about Rocky, right? Think about somebody working for 30, 40 years in their life and having nothing to show for it. Right. Those are conversations and arguments and fights and resentment and things like that I hope nobody ever has to experience. But the reality is it happens to hundreds of families inside of this industry every single year. For me personally, I went through the same thing when I left the banking industry and threw, my family into financial chaos and really just this unknown or uncertainty here going forward there, where, man, it showed up in big ways when we did not have our numbers in place, when we didn't know where we were going to be at financially going forward. It just impacts you from every side. And the thing is, inside of this industry, divorce rate is higher than other industries. We see a lot of those challenges happening because inside of farming specifically, you may be moving back as a son or a daughter to take over the farm operation, but you're bringing somebody back with you, right? And I think looking at my parents' situation, I could totally see from my mom's perspective, if she had a bunch of resentment towards my granddad or even my dad, because she sacrificed all the opportunities and all the what ifs of what she could have done with her life to be back at the operation and really try to expand upon the family operation and ultimately the legacy that they were trying to build. Lance, anything to add here?
Yeah, and I think kind of in addition to the divorce rates, the thing that we don't want to talk about is suicide rates are also very high in this
Absolutely.
industry. And we got to be very mindful of what we're going through. And if you hold that pride inside when you're dealing with, all of this stress and all of this fear, you don't seek help and you don't work towards getting an answer, then you feel in a place of despair and that you can't turn it around. The reality is we've gotten so many situations in. Producers think that their situation is so unique to them. I can promise you somebody is
Yeah.
somewhere in the United States in our industry has experienced the same thing. And guess what? Here in particular, what I love about being a part of Legacy Farmer, we have such a large amount of expertise and we've all dug people out of those type of holes and have set them back on the track. We have all these resources at our disposal and we care very much about the human being that's behind that farming operation because that's what makes our industry tick.
Yeah, and guys too, our approach is a more comprehensive approach, right? So we want people to obviously be successful financially, but at the cost of what? Right? If you build a 10 or 20 million dollar net worth or operation here, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice that has to go into it. And the question is that worth it? Right? Or do we want to try to find profitability and a good balance where you can still manage and maintain a strong marriage, strong relationship with your kids, or any other key relationships that you have there as well? Now, moving forward here, next point, when you feel owned by the bank or not on top of your finances the way you should be, how does that show up in every side of your business? If you are run down in your body, you're run down in your mindset, you ultimately have negative stories consuming your mind every hour of every single day, because most farmers and ranchers spend their time by themselves. And ultimately, too, your marriage is falling apart at home. How are you going to show up when it comes to leading your business? I already know the answer to this. You're not going to operate at near the level you should be. And ultimately, people aren't going to stay with you if you do have employees because they don't trust you as a leader and like you can get things done. And ultimately, this just adds to the weight that you're carrying. And guys, what we're ultimately talking about here is something we call the pain web. And the pain web is something that is very real. Now, inside a legacy farmer, we talk often about a concept called Core 4. And Core 4 is covering 4 key areas of life across body, being, balance, and business. Body is going to be your nutrition and your health. Being is going to be your mindset, your stories, and ultimately your purpose. We can also add in your connection to God or that higher power, whatever that is for you. Balance is going to be your relationship with your marriage, your kids, and ultimately any other key relationships. And then finally, we get to business, which is money, wealth, and ultimately the legacy that you are building there. Now, the thing is everybody comes in to these types of situations or whatever, like our customers come into legacy farmer, for example, they think they have business problems. But Lance, what is typically exposed when we start talking about business problems?
Family problems, lots of family problems, lots of friendship problems. Honestly, mental problems are some of the things that there are situations where there's been trauma in the past. And I've had this discussion with lots of different producers about how you may think that your mental health and your business is decoupled, but the reality is everything you do, everything you say, and every action you make is going to reflect in your cash flow and ultimately your balance sheet at some point. And that's what you're trying to protect. In the reality, you're causing so much stress. We're at that point of diminishing returns now.
Yep. Yep.
And we've got to find balance again. And it starts by gaining clarity in your finances and your day-to-day responsibilities.
Yep. And the other thing here too, guys, and this is just another trigger for me in the industry. Everybody wants to talk about mental health. Everybody wants to talk about suicide, but nobody really wants to provide a solution. They want to provide a helpline, right? Now, I'm not saying that may be a fit for some people. That's just not our solution. And that's also too not the data that we've gotten back from seeing this happen with hundreds of customers over the years as well. Whereas once we solve financial issues, there is this weight that is released off of people. And now all of a sudden, once we have finances in order, we can really work to start getting other areas of our life put together here, because the pain web is absolutely real. If you have a terrible body, you're overweight, out of shape, you have heart conditions because you haven't taken care of yourself, whatever, how's that going to impact you in business? Obviously in massive, massive way, right? So these things are all connected together, which is why it's such an important part of what we do in Legacy Farmer, because yes, we want to help people with finances and do everything that we're talking about here today. But man, there's a point beyond that, right? That we actually want to positively impact people's lives here. And we're going back here, Lance, you've already talked about this a little bit, but after with working with 300 plus family farm operations from across the country, the catalyst to all of this is knowing your numbers and knowing where the hell you're at financially. And we have seen the ultimate, just this emotional burden, like I said, get lifted off of people once they know where the heck they're at financially. And this can be, they can know where they're at financially. The numbers can tell us either really good things or bad things, but from both places, at least we have this foundation here. Both people are experiencing the same release of that stress here, because now we have a foundation that we can build off of. And now we can actually put a strategy or a game plan together versus people living in this land of hope and prayer. And ultimately, just driving their operation blind, not knowing where the heck they're going to be at the end of the year. And this is the lack of financial certainty that people are feeling and carrying every day of every single year. Lance, anything to add here?
I agree with you 100%. And we've seen it over and over. And I feel like that's one of the greatest joys of our job is being able to give them that release.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right, guys, now we're moving on here and we're going to go into the possibility and ultimately your future when you solve this problem. We're going to start out here with a couple key questions. Number one is, how does the bank decide who to give the best interest rate, right? And again, going back to talking about securing your operating line of credit and make sure you get the best interest rate. I can tell you from experience, the farmers who are the most financially organized and can provide accurate information are always the ones who get the best rates. Lance, why do you think that is? And from your experience, why has that been true?
Well, interest rates are assessment of risk. In reality, we're all taught as bankers that we need to set our interest rate to the risk of the customer. If you have good clarity when you go into the operation, it gives confidence to the banker that you know what's going on and what's going to be needed in your operation. If you walk in with something on the back of a napkin and you don't have a clue what your balance sheet or when he does his on-site inspection or her on-site inspection, that it's completely off one way or the other, or you forgot to put a liability on it after they pulled UCCs, there's a huge amount of uncertainty all of a sudden that lender has in your ability. And that's going to affect your interest rate, not only your interest rate, but your terms.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So out of all the customers you've worked with over the years, what percentage of them do you think were actually really structured, really well organized, and always got the best interest rates?
Being honest, zero.
Okay. So
I
yeah,
mean,
I agree.
being
Yeah.
well structured, I like there's different tiers, right?
Yeah.
I would say there's been less than five. I'd say three
I
that I
was
would say had about a handle on their business.
Yeah, literally my number is 3. I can remember 3 specific customers out of 6 years in banking that were so structured and organized. Those customers got whatever they want. They got the best service from the bank, and on every loan, they got the best interest rate out of every customer in the bank because we didn't have to worry about them.
That's right.
Right. And so, guys, when we're looking at answering this question here as to why these customers that are structured and organized, they're the ones that have the most leverage over the bank. And what do I mean by that? The leverage is what gives them the ability to run that room and gives them the confidence and certainty to know that, hey, this bank works for me, essentially. Right. I can take my numbers. I can go get financed anywhere because I'm so well structured and well organized here. And that's the level of power and really just, leverage we're wanting to give all of our customers here inside a Legacy Farmer. So their banker knows that they could walk into any bank in the region and that bank would be happy to bring in a well structured and financially organized customer that they never have to worry about. You guys need to understand how big of a freaking impact this will make in your relationship with your banker by simply getting structured and organized. Okay, it's massive, massive results here that come from doing this. And a farmer who's on top of their numbers and financially organized is a banker's dream customer because it makes their job easy. Right. And the thing is, guys, think about this. You guys hire anybody into, working for your farm operation. If you hire somebody that's highly skilled and is able to manage their time appropriately and is able to honestly take a lot of the work off your plate, how valuable is that person to you? Man, they changed the game for you. Right. So, same thing here with your banker. If you are bringing in structured and well organized numbers and they don't have to worry about you, then guess what? All of loan committee and all of the board in that bank doesn't have to worry about you either, which means you're going to get what you want when you want it. And you're always going to get the absolute best deals inside of that place. Now, moving on to question number 2 here. What information does the bank need that will give us the most leverage here to get the best interest rates? And those are really 2 things. There's actually a lot more here, but I'm going to keep it very simple and very elementary as we're jumping into our discussion here. 2 things: collateral and then cash flow. So when we're looking at this here, guys, the collateral for a lot of you here, and again, I'm going to go elementary, the collateral are the assets that you're pledging to cover any debts that you have with the bank, right? So in the event that they have to foreclose on you, these are the assets they can go sell to make sure they get their money back. But cash flow on the other end, they got to make sure that you can actually make a payment back to the bank here as well. Now, in this type of scenario here, guys, the reason this is important, especially in times like today, and I want to talk about this a little bit here, from 21 to 22, we just go through different worlds with this. And Lance, you're going to be able to speak on this too. There's something called collateral lenders, right? And so collateral lenders are lenders, and I call them yes bankers here. And some of you guys that have watched some other podcasts and videos and stuff, you'll hear me use that term. But in times or economic environments when things are really good, right? Going back 21, 22, we had low interest rate, we had high grain prices. Things were pretty good across the board here. This is when the collateral lenders come out. And what do I mean by that? They're going to make decisions on approving or not approving your loans based on the equity on your balance sheet. In those times, though, cash flow kind of disappears to the side. Right. It's not as big of a focus here because we're just looking at the amount of, from your perspective as the farmer rancher, you're looking at the asset that you're getting ready to buy at the cheap interest rate. From the bank's perspective, they're looking at the amount of money they're going to get to loan and still be making good money and have a good overall profit margin on that loan there as well. And cash flow for both parties, it kind of goes out the window here a little bit. But now fast forward to today, we have high interest rates and low grain prices. Now all of a sudden, we're not only focused on collateral, but we are focused heavily on cash flow. And this is why a lot of you guys that are either live here with us or watching the recording of this podcast, this is why you hear about banks tightening up and banks dumping customers and getting rid of customers, because now all of a sudden they could have been your best friend 3 years ago, but now they're starting to tighten up on things and kick customers to the curb essentially and tell them to find a new bank because they have massive cash flow concerns around where the industry is going. Lance, anything you want to add here?
Yeah, and there's a difference between a transactional and a relationship lender.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I know probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of bankers across the country. There's about 5 of them that I think are really good ag bankers. And in the times like you're talking about, Jace, collateral is forefront and makes it easy to get things done for them to meet their growth goals as lenders. And they're going to push them through. If they're not asking questions and they're not showing an actual interest in your risk management strategy, we definitely are going to be moving away from the partner relationship and more towards a transactional relationship. Those are not relationships you want to be in. They will not last. Their board of directors will not stay committed to you. That's a good place to walk out of the dang bank and find somebody else.
Yeah, and the thing is that too is I know a lot of transactional bankers. I'm sure you do too. And the tough thing about this industry is finding the bankers that are focused on relationship capital first.
Yep.
Those bankers are swamped. Like they
Yep.
already have massive loan portfolios. They can't even handle more customers. So I've said this to a lot of people over the past couple of years. I know we have an issue in the ag industry with farmers and not knowing their numbers, not being able to get structured and organized at the level of detail they need to be. But I would argue, guys, again, comes from working with 300 plus family farm operations from across the country and also hearing about their banks and who they're dealing with. We have just as big of an issue, if not maybe bigger of an issue on the ag banking side and these ag bankers that are just too transactional.
Yep.
Right. And not providing the level of service to these customers here that ultimately, you know, those are that's the biggest conflicting thing for me and Lance when we were in the bank there as well. Now, with this stuff, though, if you can organize and present your information in a specific way, you will have all the leverage you want on the bank, guys. And at this point, we've done this so many times now, working with these operations, building out our software called Farmer Metrics that we'll talk about here. This isn't even a question for me anymore. It's not I think your bank will like this. No, it's absolutely, it's a certainty for us at this point. It is 100% guarantee here that you will have the leverage here. And ultimately, the thing is too, is right. I don't want this to be perceived as, oh, we want you to have all the power and leverage over your banker, right? That's part of it. But the biggest thing that we want to create here is a solid relationship between you and your banker as well. That's built on a foundation of trust and transparency. Right. And the thing is, like when we get into times like this year, for example, man, a good banker is worth 10 times more to you in bad markets and tough times because they're in it for the long run, not just kicking you to the curb. They were your best friend 2 years ago when they got all your real estate as collateral and were able to make you a $2 million loan at 4%. But now all of a sudden cash flow issues come up and they're kicking you to the curb. And now you got to go refinance that land debt at 8% or 6% or whatever it is. Like this is the type of crap that we're talking about that we know is happening in the industry because it's coming from our customers and we're having to deal with that. Now, the thing is though here too, but ultimately our goal here, we want to have that transparent and foundational relationship there with your banker built on that trust and transparency there going forward. So a couple of key lessons here, guys, that we want to talk about. How you position your numbers, package your numbers, and ultimately present your numbers is what will put you in the top 1% of farmers in this country. Those three words, guys, are extremely, extremely important here for you to understand. Positioning, packaging, presentation. Right. I want you to honestly remember those things because this stuff matters and it's going to separate you and make the biggest difference if you walk into any bank in this country and you're able to show your numbers and position them in a specific way, have a nice package on how you're presenting them ultimately to the bank as well. It's just going to set you apart. Lance, anything you want to add here?
Absolutely. And we're talking about those really good bankers. Those really good bankers are not going to do your numbers for you anymore. They do not have time for it. Now, they know how to do them backwards and forwards, and they're going to be able to read through it and see your holes that fast. But we're talking about a handful of bankers out there. And if you want to be with those really good bankers, they're to be a part of their portfolio, you're going to have to do this. So it extends beyond interest rate and terms. If you want the best in the business, you're going to have to prove you're the best in the business on your side too.
Absolutely. Proving that you're the best in the business. I'm happy you said that because again, we go back to focusing on relationship capital, right? So there's financial capital, but then there's also that relationship capital. You want to be able to attract the best bankers there, man, give them a reason to chase after your business. And it ultimately starts with this. And again, guys, this isn't a question for us at this point. It's an absolute certainty that doing this and presenting numbers, positioning, packaging, and presenting them in a certain way will put you in the top 1% here. Now, key lesson number 2 is your bank is not your business partner, guys. They are your investor. And I know some of you guys watching this, especially if you're a banker, this may trigger you. And guess what? That's okay. If you're a good banker, great. Keep being a great banker. But most bankers, unfortunately, are transactional, but they want to pretend that they are the business partner inside of these operations here. And the thing is as a banker, if they were really a business partner in your operation, they would be signing the loans with you. But the thing is, and taking the same level of risk. But the thing is, their risk is collateralized. So it's not the same thing, guys. And the reason I say this is they're not your business partner. They're your investor, right? So if I came to you and I said, hey, guy, you want to invest in, or if I came to Lance, I said, Lance, you want to invest in Legacy Farmer? and I presented a half-ass scribbled balance sheet that I just did on the truck in the way in, and then a half-ass put together cash flow projection, and then a half-ass, business game plan or strategy there as well written out, what would you think about me coming in and presenting my ultimately operation or business or investment opportunity to you that way?
You don't even have a handle on your business. Why would I put any more money on it?
Why would I take the risk? And guess what? If I am going to take the risk, you're going to be 2, 3, 4, 5% higher than my well-structured and organized customers in the bank.
I would tell junior loan officers that I was training or analysts, when you're looking at this loan package, it's pretty simple. If you wouldn't give your own money to this person, right? If you had all the money to give to them and if you wouldn't lend it out with that kind of return, then the answer is no.
Yeah.
That's all there is to it.
Yep. Absolutely. Absolutely. So guys, again, remember these 3 words: position, package, present. Those things matter significantly when it comes to taking your numbers and either working with your current bank, or maybe you're on the hunt for a new bank as well. And so we've had a lot of customers that have had to do that as well. Now, guys, let's talk about the pathway going forward. And we're going to talk about a proven platform that creates financial clarity. For us, this is called Farmer Metrics. Now, this is our software here that I never dreamed that we would build. Just being honest with you guys, when I started Legacy Farmer back in 2019, it was really built, and we were doing more group coaching and consulting at that time. And the thing is, I never thought I'd get financial questions, but going into 2020, I started to get a lot of financial questions and a lot of banking specific questions there as well. And so we actually hired our first developer at that time, and we built out the first version of our software in Google Sheets, which is just crazy to think back to that time. 2020 does not seem like it was 5 years ago, which is just, mind blowing to me. But going back at that time though, we started to expand it and things there. And we got a lot of customers using Google Sheets. And then we eventually we hired a legit software team and built out our enterprise software here called Farmer Metrics. Now, what we're going to do now is I'm going to share another screen here, and we are going to start walking through this and giving you guys just a viewpoint into what the software looks like and everything there. Now, one thing that you guys need to know about our software is every tool, every page in here has been built with our customers. Now, that's really important here because everything in the software, it's not a nice to have feature, it's a must have feature because we've already tested these things with our customers. We get feedback with our customers. We've literally built the software with our customers over the past 5 years here. And that's really important because a lot of softwares in the industry, there's a lot of good ones out there, but the more features you add to a software, if they're not valuable, it just brings more complexity, which means the likelihood of you using it actually goes down tremendously. And that's been the same for me in the softwares that I use personally. Lance, I'm sure it's been the same for you as well. But every customer, when they first come into Legacy Farmer, we want to talk about the journey here that you're going to experience when you come into Legacy Farmer or choose to use Farmer Metrics here. First thing we're talking about is getting your businesses structured and organized. Now, the reason that we do this is because most of our customers coming in have multiple sources of income, but unfortunately, they have those sources of income running through one bank account, and they have no idea where the heck they're making money, losing money. They have one balance sheet for the entire operation. They don't know the strengths and weaknesses of each individual business. And because of this, we ultimately don't get any financial clarity. Lance, anything you want to add here?
No, and that's one of the things we preach really hard at Legacy Farmer is getting structure, because that entity structure you're talking about presents the highest legal liability and also the highest tax liability. And so we take one step at a time. And then obviously you really got to focus on these things as you grow.
Yeah, guys. And two, the number one goal here that everybody wants coming into Legacy Farm, right? We're all doing this to build a legacy that we can pass on to the next generation. But most people right now, if I were to ask you what type of operation do you pass on, it's most likely not going to be clean, structured, organized, and legally protected. It's going to be chaos, riddled with debt, and I have no idea where the hell anything is at inside of my operation. Right. I mean, it's just the facts of where we're at today. And a big reason as to obviously why we built this and why we do what we do here. But we got to have some level of structure and organization here with the businesses, get things separated out. Now, past this point, though, once our customers, we work through and help them get this type of stuff set up, then we move into setting up individual balance sheets for each individual business. Now, the reason that we do this is because we need to see the key KPIs for each individual business. And also too, we need to be tracking the profitability of each individual business as well, because what we found is if a customer has a farm operation, cattle operation, and then some maybe type of custom service business or whatever that is there, you're spending a lot of hours every single year. The average farmer is working, best I can figure, 3,500 to 4,000 hours per year. But a lot of them though, And a lot of time, and this is just an unfortunate truth, they're spending a majority of their hours in the business that is making them the most money, or the one that's actually losing them money every year. And this is where we have to start at the foundational level of organizing the businesses, and then getting a separate balance sheet put together with each individual business, so we can clearly see the profitability and the strengths and weaknesses here of each individual business and some of these key KPIs here. Lance, anything you want to add here?
Absolutely. And that's the only way when you start having issues to really diagnose the issue. When everything's muddied up in the water and you've got cattle, custom farming income all coming through the cash flow, when you go in there and you start trying to unwind that big ball of twine, it's almost impossible to get to the base of it. So really and truly, if you want to find a way forward, you need to diagnose which ones are making you money and which ones are not making you money. And the more granular you get in your financial system, the more information that you put into it, the more you will get out and the more capability you will have to expand and grow. And then ultimately, for a lot of our industry, pass it on to the next generation.
Yep. And one point here too, guys, that I want to make, and going back to your banker is an investor, not your business partner. A lot of customers or a lot of people in the industry, when they want to buy something, the first thing that they'll do is call their banker and see what they think, right? And see what they can afford. Guys, that's not your banker's responsibility, right? It's your responsibility as the business owner to have access to the tools and ultimately the financial knowledge there to be able to know exactly what the bank is going to say on that loan or that decision before you ever walk in the doors. Right. And this is where we talk about giving our customers that level of financial certainty and confidence they want. We want to train our customers so they know exactly how to make these decisions and really game plan out exactly how it's going to impact their balance sheet, their cash flow, or whatever. That way, when they walk into the bank, they're not asking for money. They're presenting, once again, an opportunity for the bank to invest in. It just changes the entire dynamic of that relationship there. And Lance, I'm sure you've experienced that yourself as well.
Oh my gosh, yeah, absolutely. And you got a guy that walks in that knows what he's talking about. And it's amazing because some of these operators are better at it than they even realize.
Yep.
And they'll come in and request. I remember one of my first requests when I worked for Capital Farm Credit back in the day. I had a customer walk in. He wanted a bigger planter. He's talking about the amount of time that it would save him in terms of getting across the acreages and everything else. In terms of the return on the investment was astronomical. So they just didn't have the numbers to present it, or they would have had the confidence before they got in there of what the answer was going to be. To me, it was a no-brainer. To them, they didn't think that they really had the position to do it, but it was an absolute yes.
So that financial certainty that they were looking for, they actually had to look for it from their banker versus them having the knowledge and the tools to go find that financial certainty themselves.
Yes.
Right. It just changes it changes everything about how we operate as business owners when we have this type of just structure and organization here. Now, guys, leading through the balance sheet here, you're going to have an individual assets and liabilities page here too in the software that you go in and you put in all your current, intermediate, and long-term assets. Same thing on liabilities here as well. Now, one thing here, and a big reason that we started in the early days building out the software this way, is because what most people don't do, and this is just common practice, right? You guys are typically updating your balance sheet and your cash flow projections one time per year. You're doing an annual cash flow projection, you're doing an annual balance sheet there, and then you're not looking at that thing ever again until the next year. You got to get renewed, and all of a sudden you're updating that stuff again there. With our customers, though, one of the standards that we have inside of Legacy Farmers, we're updating these things on a monthly basis because your balance sheet is fluctuating every single month, especially as we're getting into spring work and everything here. People are going to start spending a lot more money and things like that. And the reason for this and updating it every single month is because now you're going to start to learn how your operation, what the heartbeat of your operation is. Right. And what are the things that are happening here? Why do you get into certain situations? Why do certain problems happen? Those are the things that we're really pinpointing here, and why we want to be able to go back and look at our balance sheet from month to month. The other thing, though, too, that Lance and I have experienced is we'll have a customer come in and say, "Hey, I'm missing $400,000 somewhere." Okay, great. So let's go back month by month in your balance sheet. We're going to see what's changed here. And maybe we forgot to add something. Maybe we deleted something, or maybe we just completely missed something altogether here that we need to get added in here. Right. And I've experienced that personally a ton of times working with customers. Lance, how about you?
Absolutely. And that's where a good, strong cash flow comes into play too.
Yeah.
We're going to get there, but being able to reconcile that cash flow with your line of credit, the ledger that it produces, and making sure you're in line every month is a huge element of clarity.
Yep. So guys, that's a good segue there, Lance, into our cash flow. So on our cash flow, guys, we operate a little bit differently, and some people do this in the industry. To my surprise, most people don't, right? And what we do with our customers is we're helping them put together a month-by-month cash flow projection, right? So we have our projections, but on top of that, though, we have our customers come back in, and after January passes, for example, they're coming back in and putting in their actuals for January so that we can compare, hey, this is what we projected to do, this is what we actually did. Now, the reason for this is because you, as the business owner, one, if you're not putting in your actuals, you're not looking at your numbers ever again until the next year, right? This is the problem that we get into. Out of sight, out of mind. People wonder why they're hurting financially. It's because this stuff is not top of mind for them and in front of them. But also, number two is you're learning about how you make decisions as a business owner, which is going to ultimately get you to a place where you learn your habits, you learn your emotions, you learn when you need to create space here in order when it comes to making a big financial decision or things like that. Now, at the bottom of this cash flow, though, too, we have a lot of customers coming in, especially in today's day and age where we're dealing with high inflation and everything in 21 and 22, or really 22 and 23 there with fertilizer and chemical, for example. A lot of people did not have the size of operating line of credit that they needed. And they're, once again, leaving that up to their banker to tell them what they need. You need to be able to walk into your bank and tell exactly what you are going to need as far as an operating line of credit and be able to show proof in the numbers, not walking in and saying, oh, I feel like I need $500,000 or I need $1 million or whatever that is there. And to my surprise as well, a lot of people have come into Legacy Farmer, and I never thought this was going to be an issue, but they've said, I didn't even know I could ask for a raise. I didn't even know I could negotiate interest rates. I didn't even know I could do any of these things here. So Lance, you have anything you want to add here?
Oh my gosh, this is one of the biggest pressure points for me whenever I was a lender. If you don't know how much you need to operate, we got big problems. Because that tells me you don't know the ins and outs of your operation. And there's a couple different ways of doing your operating line, and these guys will bump their operating line thinking that they're losing money. There's the other side of this deal. When in reality, they're not losing money. They just have stuff on there that shouldn't be on there. The only way to get clarity is to have some kind of tool like this that really shows where you should be and be measuring against your projections. Projections are wrong 100% of the time, but they have to be in the operation to give you some kind of guiding light in order to determine if you are getting off base and try to figure out where we got off base or if that was a fundamental change in the business. So to me, this is a huge pressure point. I know for other lenders, we've had these discussions. Not knowing how much you need is probably one of the biggest red flags.
Yeah. So again, big thing here too, right? So with your operating line going up and down, we go back to the first thing that bankers are worried about is collateral, right? Number two is cash flow. But from the collateral side here, if you're asking for an operating line of credit for $1 million, but technically your cash flow shows you need 1.5, that's going to impact their collateral position with you, which actually goes into our borrowing power page here that we'll talk about in a minute. But if you're not on top of this, man, it's going to impact them. It's going to impact you. But also, too, if you don't know your numbers at this level of detail here, it just breeds this level of doubt or lack of confidence that your banker is going to have in you and your ability to run your operation at a high level, right? And you can always notice this stuff. And these are the people here, too. They come in with a half-ass put together cash flow. They scribbled it in on the truck before they walked in the door. And a lot of banks, unfortunately, right now, they're stamping that as approved. Hey, we're good. Let's move forward. Let's get through this year and let's see what happens. Guys, there's so many red flags and problems with operating your business that way. You are going to face massive, massive problems in the future here going forward if you don't get these things fixed. The other thing here too that the cash flow is showing, right? So at the bottom here, it's actually showing here, and let me zoom in here a little bit. There's obviously a lot of information on the screen here, but we're actually paying attention to what that operating loan balance is going to do throughout the year. So when I say you're walking into your bank with actual numbers here on exactly what you need, and they're backed with these factual numbers here, again, it just has this level of confidence, again, trust and transparency with your banker there too, to where now they're going to have a level of confidence in you as well because you're actually showing these things. The other thing though too is a lot of people, they get caught in situations throughout the year to where they maybe have a problem and it happens always at the worst time, right? Maybe there's a huge repair bill or something like that that comes in the middle of harvest, wheat harvest here in Kansas, first part of July here, and people have a huge breakdown and it's going to impact their cash flow massively. For the people that don't know their numbers at this level of detail, that one roadblock right there could set them back massively. And now they're going to have to call the bank and they're going to have to get a side operating line of credit or something to get a quick fix or increase their current line of credit. Lance, what's the first thing the bank's going to ask for?
Updated balance sheet and cash flow.
Updated balance sheet and cash flow. But you're in the middle of harvest dealing with the stresses of that. You're trying to get a crop out of the ground. And now you got to stop to go update your balance sheet and your cash flow there, even though you gave it to the bank at the beginning of the year. This is also, too, the advantage that our customers have here to, one, be able to handle those types of situations the right way. Because information is already updated. Our customers are automatically sending it to their bank once a month, or at least that's what we're pushing them to do, just so when these situations come up, bank already has their information. But also too, right, everybody wonders why they don't get certain opportunities inside of the ag industry. Maybe it's expanding on acres or buying a piece of ground or something like that as well. Because if you're not structured and organized financially, and every time you want to go buy a piece of ground and there's a lot of people bidding on it, and now you have to spend 2 weeks getting a loan approved before you even know if you can get it bought, and you got to update balance sheet and stuff like that, our customers don't have to worry about that. Bank already has updated information. They're able to go to loan committee if they have to that week and get it approved and get it moving forward. So there's also an opportunity side to this as well. So guys, the cash flow here, there's a lot of information here, but this is where too, we always find $100 to $200,000 per year that's just bleeding through the bottom of the operation, right? Lance, have you experienced that with your customers as well?
Oh yeah. I mean, it's all over the board. I mean, and you get right down to it, you're insuring things, and also you've got equipment that's not being used accurately. The cost of ownership is astronomically through the roof. Your term payments are out of control. This is where you can really see that. And you know, some of our other tools are even better at that in terms of farmer field metrics and things like
Yep.
that, getting down to the granular level. But yeah, it all starts at cash flow.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So again, too, customer walks in with this level of detail for you, Lance. What do you automatically assume about that customer?
First of all, it's a huge sigh of relief. And it means that these guys know how they're going to operate. They have at least some plan. I don't expect them to stick to the plan. It gives me confidence that they're working off of a plan and we're not shooting from the hip. We've evaluated different elements of the business and we've decided that it's good to continue down this road with these crop mixes or these livestock mixes with this equipment. And they have a plan for carrying it. That's what I see.
Yep. And one thing you made me think of here, especially in times like this year, in bad times, you want to have a banker that's going to back you up, have this level of detail there, showing that, hey, I've really thought through this and I have a game plan of how to get through these rough economic times. Those are the banks.
Absolutely.
You're giving your banker then, guys, the ammo to go to loan committee, because every loan is going to loan committee nowadays because everybody's worried. You're giving them the ammo to back you up when it comes to loan committee where they're being questioned, right, or criticized or challenged or whatever that is there. So you want to make sure your loan's getting approved here and get your operating line of credit renewed and also at the best interest rate. Man, give your banker the ammo he needs. Don't make him have to put this together for you, because a lot of banks will do that. And then they're trying to call you. Guys, your banker's never going to know your operation at the level that you will, period. Period. It's not even close. I laugh sometimes when customers will send us, well, this is the cash flow or the balance sheet my banker put together for me. It's so far off from what reality is. It's laughable.
Yep.
So, okay. All right, guys. So past the cash flow here, there's a lot more things that we could go into here and what this is going to provide for you. But man, we would need another 2 hours there to go into that stuff. The next most important page here, guys, that we're going to jump into is the borrowing power page. So this is where I really talk about your leverage with the bank. So when we're looking at collateral, right, the number one thing that banks are first focused on, do you have the assets to actually give the bank as collateral to confidently secure your notes so they know in the event of a bankruptcy, they can get their money back? This is what this table is showing you. Now, up at the top here, we have two key things here that we're really focused on. We have the total borrowing power and the total bank safety net. Now, the total borrowing power is your leverage with the bank, meaning we gave the bank $2 million in real estate. This is what we can borrow against it, right? So for example, here in like our sheet here, average loan to value on real estate loans is anywhere between 75 to 80%, right? So as a business owner, I'm not only worried about the market value of my assets, I'm worried about the borrowing value of my assets as well, because just because I give the bank $2 million in real estate does not mean that I can borrow $2 million. Right? A lot of people don't factor in loan to value on these notes here. So the reason this page is important is because when it comes to making big financial decisions inside of this industry, which side note, I don't know of very many small decisions inside of this industry nowadays, but when it comes to making these big financial decisions here, I need to know, do I have the collateral to actually pull this off? And will I be putting myself in a bad position with the bank? So you need to know your leverage position or your borrowing power with the bank. But then this total bank safety net up here, you need to know their position with you as well. Right. And again, this goes back to knowing how they're playing the game of banking and what their position with you is going to be. When you know both sides of it and you know both playbooks, for example, they're losing all their power and all their leverage here. Lance, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, and a good banker is going to know this before you walk in.
Yeah.
And so the smart bankers are going to keep this in the back of their mind. It's not that they're going to use it for leverage on you, but it's going to be extremely impressive that you walk in with confidence and a game plan in order to do what you want to do.
Yeah. And also too, we talk about collateral and cash flow. When you walk in with this level of detail, you're walking in showing that you're not only focused on your interest, right? And what are you going to get out of the relationship? You're focused on their interest as well, right? So one of our core values here at Legacy Farmer, guys, is we only believe in win-win scenarios, right? A lot of people in society believe that in order for one person to win, the other person has to lose. We don't operate that way. There's got to be a win-win with whatever job we're doing. Bringing people on the team, bringing customers into Legacy Farmer, whatever it is. But especially with your banker, if you can show them, hey, I'm watching out for your interest as well. This is what your bank's safety net's going to be, essentially total value of your assets minus liabilities, and that's what their safety net's going to be if they had to liquidate or whatever. Man, it just shows again a good what do you call it, an act of good faith there, right? That you're watching out for them as well, which most people, they don't even know how to do that, right? And again, we're talking about building a foundational relationship with your banker built on trust and transparency. This is one of the key ways to do this as well. All right, guys, last piece here that we're going to focus on here is we have something in here called field metrics as well. Now, field metrics is going to be field by field level profitability. So the important thing here is that down at the bottom, you know exactly what your break-even yield and break-even price needs to be either per crop or per field there as well. When it comes to your overall numbers and financial situation and things like that. Again, just an additional tool here that you can provide to your banker here that's going to, again, set you apart from everybody else as well. But also, too, this feeds into your balance sheet. This feeds into your cash flow projections and things like that as well. So, Lance, what do you got here?
I love this tool. It's my favorite tool of all of them. Being able to get down in the brass tacks of everything and get on break evens. It helps your crop insurance strategy. It helps your marketing, your risk management strategy. You really see which fields. Not all fields produce the same. We all know that. There are fields that are consistent cancers in our operation. This helps isolate that. That helps us find out who our players are, where we can double down on them and back off those weaknesses in our operation. I really push a lot of my customers into this. It requires a lot of detail, but like everything else in this system, what you put in is what you get out.
Absolutely. All right, guys. So, all right, that's everything we're going to cover in the software now. So let me go back to my original presentation here and get some of this stuff pulled back up here. All right, guys. So now talking about your future and ultimately, what are you waiting for in order to make the moves that you need to make inside your operation? Because again, we talked about the problem. We talked about the possibility. Most of you guys right now understand the problem that we were talking about, right? And so the reason we shared this again is because those issues right now and all the financial issues that Lance and I have talked about, we know for a fact we're dealing with inside the industry because we're dealing it with customers coming into Legacy Farmer currently. So nothing we're talking about here is based on theory. It's all based on actually what we're dealing with our customers. Now, looking at the future here, going forward, we're going to talk about the tale of two farmers. So I'm a Yellowstone fan, so I always use Yellowstone names. One of the demo name inside the account that I was just showing you was John Dutton inside of our software here. So we're going to talk about the two different farmers, John Dutton and Beth Dutton. I can't really see Beth Dutton being a farmer, but hey, I decided to put her in there anyway. John Dutton, let's look into the facts about his operation. One, he operates in financial chaos, right? He ultimately has no idea where anything's at, which leads him to number two here. He guesses with every financial decision. And right. And a lot of people here, when you think about financial chaos, guys, financial chaos to me is having your truck covered in papers or walking into your office and you literally have stacks of papers on the floor. And that's how you're keeping things organized, right? And you have receipts and everything for everything, but everything's trying to structured and organized there. And you'll get to it at some point throughout the year there, which that time never really comes. Typically, everybody's just rushing around at the end of the year, hauling all that crap into their accountant and saying, hey, tell me what I need to pay for tax or in prepaids here so I can minimize my tax bill there, which obviously that's not a strategy. You are not going to be successful long-term going forward. John also only updates his numbers once per year at renewal. He expects his banker to do his balance sheet which a lot of people unfortunately do that. And I'm not targeting the farmers for that. It's because the bankers have trained them that that's what's going to happen. The banker's just going to do the balance sheet and everything for him. John also maxes out his operating line of credit consistently throughout the year, tops it out. He lets his banker decide his financial game plan, meaning putting together his cash flow projections and that type of crap. But then he ultimately lives on one single strategy, hope and prayer, right? So Lance mentioned the term earlier that a lot of people are shooting from the hip financially. And that's such a good way to describe it inside of our industry because people are aiming, but they don't really have a specific target that they're aiming at. They're just hoping that they can shoot from the hip and hopefully hit something. But you know for a fact, man, it's not going to work out long term. And they have to get extremely focused here going forward as well. Now, let's look at the facts about Beth's operation. One, treats her operation like a business, right? Is structured, organized, and knows exactly where every dollar is going inside of that business. She operates with extreme focus on organization for financial clarity. There's no decision that we are leaving to guess with or leaning on our banker to tell us whether or not it's the right decision or getting their opinion or whatever. We already have the structure and organization here that Beth knows exactly where she's going to be at financially with that decision. Third one, strategic and thoughtful with every decision. When you have your numbers structured and organized, one thing here too that I do want to talk about is, guys, when you have this level of structure and organization, you're able to create space. Now, what do I mean by that? If you are not structured and organized and you have an opportunity to go buy a new piece of ground or something like that, you are rushing. In your mind, you're rushing. In your paperwork and everything like that, you are rushing because you know deep down that if you don't jump on this, you may not get the opportunity there or whatever. If you're already structured and organized, you're just more on top of your numbers. You're more thoughtful. You're more aware of what's going on. And you have this ability to create space. When you know your numbers, it actually gives you the ability to be patient. Because again, when you know your numbers at this level of detail, you don't have to rush into every decision. It's not a pull the trigger today or this afternoon, or I got to call my banker right now. It's, hey, let's go really analyze this. I already have the numbers structured and organized, and I'm going to create that space so I can actually have patience here and make sure I'm making a good, sound business decision versus pulling the trigger way too soon and not really accounting or thinking through all the factors that are going to come into play with this. Fourth piece here is she updates and carefully reviews her numbers monthly. She treats the bank as an investor. Again, talking about these three words: position, package, and presentation. Never maxes out the line of credit because she has a game plan on that cash flow projection, is able to see exactly what her operating line of credit balance is going to do throughout the year, and even putting in there random expenses that could come up. Maybe it's an equipment repair or something like that in the middle of harvest. We can actually game plan those things out there and show the bank that you're thinking about those things as well. Because of this, she gets the best interest rate on literally every single loan. She controls every conversation with her banker because her banker knows that she knows her operation better than he or she ever will. Period. And that, again, gives her all the leverage and power inside of that conversation, and then lives in the rare world of financial certainty, right? And guys, this word certainty is a big deal because at the end of the day, if I had to describe the number one thing that our customers and legacy farmer are wanting, it's certainty. I think that's not even just an ag industry specific thing. I think it's a global thing. People want some level of financial confidence and certainty in what their future is going to hold. And when you don't know your numbers, I'm sorry, you have no chance to have any level of financial certainty. So Lance, you have anything to add there? Oh, are you muted? No, can't hear you. That's right. We'll keep moving forward. Okay, so next piece here, guys, is why do you think, or who do you think will be more successful in business and life? If we were looking at John or Beth, I think the answer is obviously pretty obvious here, that it's going to be Beth there long-term, because she's structured, she's organized, she's on top of her numbers, and just knows where the heck she's at. Lance, you got me now?
Yeah, can you hear me now?
Yeah, I got you now. So we're good.
Perfect. Yeah, I didn't have anything to add. I think you nailed it on the last one. Yeah.
Great. Okay, guys. So again, looking at this, you guys have two different worlds here that you're going to ultimately be able to play in. And ultimately, a lot of you guys right now, if we're being honest, are in the situation that John Dutton's in, right? There's financial gaps, there's problems, there's challenges inside of your operation, but you're looking for a way to solve it, right? You're looking for, what do I do here? How do I solve these freaking problems and ultimately build the operation that I want to and can, so that I can build something that I can pass on to the next generation. And obviously you see the drastic difference here between these two people here as well. Okay, so now jumping into our next point here, guys, we're going to talk about our guarantee when you use our software, Farmer Metrics here, right? And we're going to give you guys free access to it and be able to let you use that. So make sure you stay here till the end with us. But of our guarantees here, guys, guarantee number one is, when you use this and you're structured and organized, you will always be in the top 1% of farmers who are financially organized, which gives you the ability to work with any bank, because every bank will want your business. And again, this isn't a question of, oh, I hope they will. It's a guarantee at this standpoint, right? So we know this for a fact from proving this with hundreds of customers over the years. Farmers that use our platform are a bank's dream customer and have the most leverage with their bank. That is a guarantee. Number two is, you will always have significant leverage on your bank to ensure you get the best interest rates. And the reason for this is because they know you can take your numbers, export them very simply from the software, and go anywhere you want to. And any bank is going to be happy to bring in a well-structured, organized, grade A customer that they can invest money into and get the easiest interest income that they've ever received there inside of that bank there. Guarantee number 3 is when big financial decisions or opportunities come up, you will be able to act quickly with certainty in that decision. So again, guys, we talk about some people that they're missing these opportunities here and they don't have the ability to act and respond quickly here. And they wonder why John down the street or down the road is able to capture these opportunities. Well, consider the possibility that they're running their finances a lot different than you are. Right. And when you're structured and organized here, all of a sudden now the game changes. It absolutely changes completely here to where now you're in the financial position here to go in and actually pull this off and be able to respond and act quickly here to make sure you're in a financial position to get this stuff done. Then guarantee number 4, you will experience a level of confidence, certainty, and financial clarity that you never had because of how well you know your numbers. Now, again, this is not a question for me. This is an absolute guarantee on my end from seeing this happen over and over again with our customers here. So again, you have 2 choices here going forward. You're going to either be in the road of John Dutton and continue to live in financial chaos and disorganization, or you're going to move forward and try to get on the Beth Dutton journey there and know where the heck you're at financially and know exactly what you need to do here. So moving forward here, you ultimately have one simple option here, guys, and we're making this as easy as we can for you. You guys can get started today inside of our software. You can literally sign up for free by going to farmermetrics.com/webinar here. And we have obviously popping across the bottom of the screen here. Guys, you would literally be able to sign up for free, go in, start getting your numbers structured and organized. And finally, for the first time in your life, getting on top of your numbers here and knowing where the heck you're at financially. And for the first time, experiencing that level of financial certainty that you probably have not had up to this point here. So Lance, anything to end here as we're wrapping up today's conversation?
Well, I would say, as in general, if somebody were to present this kind of information to me, just this balance sheet and cash flow alone would change the way that we approach the relationship. Having this kind of clarity not only helps your situation, which is what we're most concerned about, but all of the relationships around the farm.
Yep, for sure. All right, so okay, Faith will probably bring you back on here, and we can start looking over any questions or anything like that are coming in through chats or things there.
Awesome. So I just put a phone number at the bottom of the webinar. So please feel free, if you're watching on our page, to text any questions that you have to the phone number. If you're live, just feel free to pop your questions in the comments and we'll be more than happy to answer them.
I have a question coming up here. One of the platforms that said, "What do banks look at when they decline a line of credit?" Jace, do you want to jump in on that one? Or
you handle it. You handle it.
Okay, so when you get denied, it's going to be first and foremost the easiest way to deny a line of credit is showing that you don't have a plan. So a good cash flow, something you can't even comprehend how much you spent per acre last year and how much you plan to spend this year, is a big red flag. Balance sheet is definitely important, but I would say for most relationship lenders, your cash flow is going to be your primary thing, followed by your balance sheet. And they need to talk to each other. They need to make sense. If you've had 6 years of losses, it needs to make sure that the equity reflects that. If you've had 6 years of gains, your equity should reflect that. So these are things that you really need to monitor and go forward, and that will prevent you from having that situation where you do get declined.
Yeah, absolutely.
Here's another one. It says, "How can I make my farm more appealing to the bank?"
Yeah,
I think we spent a whole presentation on that.
I mean, really, guys, it goes back to, again, positioning, packaging, presentation there. Again, looking at your operation as an investment for the bank versus them partnering in your operation. Those are 2 drastically different things here. And again, too, when you're looking at them as an investor, you're going to make sure you're structuring and presenting the operation in a drastically different way. And so like inside of our software here, for example, our customers are able to go in, put in their balance sheets, all this type of stuff, put in their cash flow, but then export those numbers in either a PDF format or an Excel format and send that straight over to their bankers there as well. Again, thinking about a banker receiving that type of information from you, it's going to drastically change that relationship and ultimately, how they treat you going forward there as well, which again, we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can on our end to make sure you guys are in a position where you're getting the best interest rates and ultimately the best service from your bank there as well.
Here's another one. Does crop insurance or grain marketing help me get a loan? I would jump in on that one. Yeah, absolutely. A good crop insurance plan is pivotal to the bank feeling like you got a good handle on your business. And like we talked about in farm and field metrics within farmer metrics, that's a really good place to get a start. Grain marketing. I always tell everybody you need to insure your break evens and market your profits. You don't want to get in the process of just buying insurance to buy insurance. There's some more sophisticated tools than ever in insurance to help you digest where that sweet spot would have been in your operation. Having insurance is extremely important. Some lenders require it. And so if you don't have it, they're going to force it on you, even though it's very, very low levels. Those low levels are usually just cash cows for the AIPs. So I would really, really encourage you to spend that time learning about your marketing plan, learning about your crop insurance plan.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely. All right. One other question here that I see coming in. Why do farmers get turned down for a line of credit? So guys, I think we're experiencing this a lot right now. One of the customers that I was talking to the other day says that he's heard of 5 different customers, large customers too, that have actually gotten turned down by the bank and the bank is not renewing them going into 2025. And these, again, it's the type of scenario where this customer, the bank was their best friend back 2 to 3 years ago. But because of the financial situation that everybody's in now, and really the scarcity that the banks are operating with, they're not going to spend time or take a risk of investing in an operation that's not structured and organized at the level that they expect it to be. And again, too, right, for a certain number of years, maybe the bank can get by with it because grain prices are higher and they're kind of counting on that there as well. But for a lot of people, though, in today's world, the banks, again, are focusing on that cash flow. They're scared about that. So if you're not in a position where you can confidently give a detailed game plan, even if you're showing losing money for the year, maybe your projections are showing that you're losing $100,000 for the year or $200,000 for the year, whatever. Man, at least having that structure and organization there and being able to show the game plan is going to, again, set you above and beyond and apart from every other customer in that bank and establish that trust and transparent relationship there that we were talking about earlier.
Here's an interesting question that's coming through. It says, is farm credit or a regular bank better for a line of credit? And when you say regular bank, I guess you mean commercial bank. But there's a huge difference between farm credit and commercial bank. So farm credit was set up to serve rural communities. Let me explain. There's about 56 different associations across the United States that cover the whole gamut of agriculture. Each association runs a little different than the other one, but as a whole, farm credit is regulated. In the event that you do get in a tight spot, they have to work with you. You have to provide a plan. This is how it was set up way back in the early 1900s. That's how it is today. There is more flexibility. Every one of their directors is a farm and rancher somewhere that was nominated by another farm and rancher to serve on the board. So the mindset is a little bit different. Commercial lenders, now I'm going to caveat that by saying your relationship with your lender is twofold. You got your relationship with your lender and your relationship with your lending institution. And often that's different, because you can have a good lender that's in a bad situation and he's crawling uphill trying to get something done. He can never get it done.
Yeah.
And then you can have a bad lender that's with a good institution, and you may never know how bad he is because the institution compensates for his weaknesses. Either way, that's a bad situation. So you want to look for the lending institution itself is one step of the equation. You need to find a good lender and a good institution.
Yeah. And a lot of people, though, too, they don't know enough about how the bank operates, though, to know whether or not they have a good lender or a good institution or vice versa, right? They don't have enough knowledge there to be able to pull that off. And so, all right, guys, next question we have here is it standard for every bank to depreciate assets by 10% year to year? Or is that just what I've been told? If it is standard practice, how is that justified when operations come in all shapes and sizes? So to me, it's not standard 10% every year. I think it changes year to year. So for example, when I was back in the bank, we had one year where we had examiners come in, and this was 2014, and they told us to cut all of our machinery and equipment values on customers' balance sheets by 30 to 40% minimum. Just a haircut right off the top. It did not matter. Now for the customers, to where a majority of their borrowing power that we talked about earlier was setting in their equipment values, that was a massive, massive hit to their operation here. So is it standard to do it every single year? No. I think it's more up and down every single year there as well. Especially too, just with, and it's not, guys, it's just not realistic though either, right? We're talking about depreciating these assets. If we're talking about equipment, I don't know about you, Lance, but I mean, I think it's pretty obvious. Price of a combine has went up since 2014 or 2015, right? We're dealing with massive numbers compared to what we were dealing with even back then. So at the end of the day, yeah, we can depreciate some things here, but we need to make sure that we're still representing what the market is actually paying for those assets there too.
Yeah, and I'll add on to that I will say that the depreciation has increased because of the price. Yep. When the price has gotten up, the decline is steeper. So we have to keep that in mind when we're evaluating cost of ownership in these machines. But here's the other thing. I have preached from the hilltops with my customers. When you're filling out your balance sheet, you got to have detail. If you want to justify the value that you have on that tractor and all you put is a John Deere tractor on there with so many hours, they're just going to find something generic and mark it way down because they're not going to go out and do that work. You need to put serial numbers on your balance sheet. You need to put make and model on your balance sheet, hours, and then also this big thing. What additions do you have on that machine? Do you have multiple sets of remotes? Do you have a loader on that machine with multiple attachments? These are things that increase the value. If you don't want to be told what you're worth, then you tell them and you justify where your position is on that balance sheet.
Yep. Okay. All right. Next question I see here is, how do I keep a strong relationship with my bank for future loans? Well, guys, I mean, in tough times like we're dealing with today, again, going back to truth and transparency. Right. You show them exactly what it is, what the numbers are showing. But then on top of that, you show them what your game plan is there to get through these tough times. And again, it goes back to, in today's world, we're not so much focused on financial capital. We're focused more on relationship capital in tough years and getting through tough time. So a lot of people, we're always looking for cheaper interest rates. But the number one question that I always ask customers is, well, what's your current relationship with your current banker? Right? What's your current banker able to do? And if they're talking that banker up and saying they have a great person there that backs them up and things like that, but now they're talking about moving their loans because they can get 1% better at another bank there. To me, guys, that's not worth the move. And the reason is, yes, from a financial standpoint, I get it. It makes sense. But from a relationship capital standpoint and really going through a tough time standpoint here, that banker that's been with you through the good times and the bad times, that's the person that you want to stick with you for the long term there.
Totally agree.
So, all right, Lance, I'll let you answer this one. What are some of the biggest problems and most common challenges your customers are currently facing going into 2025?
Uncertainty with prices, uncertainty with the tariff war that we're currently in. So with uncertainty, that bleeds and stresses the need for additional clarity on their end. So we talk about how bankers react to a lot of situations, but the banking relationship's really two-way. You're going to get the best relationship if you are the best type of borrower. And so that's what we've been talking about on this. The way we become the best type of borrower is we understand why we are where we are, where the cash flow is going, and why the balance sheet is currently showing the numbers that it's showing. When you walk in without a plan, then you add that uncertainty of what's going on in the market right now, and it makes bankers really clam up. Yep. And they don't really know what to do because they're evaluated on credit portfolio. And if their credit portfolio takes a hit, then so does their bonus. So we get back down to how they're incentivized.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So next question here is, what is the cost of the software? So guys, if you go to that link there and you scroll down, you're going to see the pricing for the software. We have a completely free plan, and then we have a paid plan, and then we have our legacy farmer plan, which includes the software plus more coaching and consulting there. So I'll let you go to that page there to find that information. And then next question here is, watching the webinar, will this software work if farming is the smallest of your multiple entities? Example, I own a trucking company and freight brokerage, but married into a farming family. So yeah, guys, absolutely. So a majority of our customers have a custom business or like a trucking business, something like that, that runs alongside their farm operation. So in here, yeah, the balance sheet, the cash flows, guys, is relevant for every type of business. That's why, like, when it comes to our, who we're helping, yes, we're helping farmers, we're helping ranchers, but we're helping ag business owners too. So any part of the ag industry that you're operating in, this software is going to help you, and it's going to position you in a great relationship there with your bank, because you're so structured and organized across the board there.
And to build on that question, actually, I have one that is primarily trucking and custom work, and a very, very, very small farm. And he has gained quite a bit of clarity by using our software package.
Yeah. Because then too, I mean, just to elaborate on that a little bit more, your banks are, even though you may have separate entities or separate types of businesses, they're most likely you're getting financing for all of them. But also too, they're taking all of your assets as collateral. So if you're able to give them a detailed viewpoint of all your businesses and broken out, structured, and organized, it's just going to give you more leverage to get a better interest rate. But also too, inside the software, one of the features that I didn't show, well, really two, one is you can go back as far as you need to, as far as dates in the past here, and go month by month and see what changed in your balance sheet and your cash flow there. But two, you can bring all those entities together as well. So you can combine all your entities and have one comprehensive balance sheet. You can have one comprehensive cash flow there as well. So to your banker, you're able to present them with a comprehensive balance sheet and cash flow for each business, and then an individual balance sheet and cash flow for each individual business there as well. Again, the number of customers that can actually do that today, less than 1% in this country. It just giving you a better edge there working with your banker.
I want to add on to a related, somewhat unrelated note, is the fact that also once you get these numbers in here, a lot of people are overwhelmed. What do I do with them?
Yeah.
Well, the good point, the good part about Legacy Farmer is we have a very experienced coaching staff, and that's where we come in and help you interpret those numbers, teach you how to look at those numbers, how to make decisions based on when you're getting ready to make a big acquisition. We're here to help you run kind of some pro formas or projections based on those, and how that's going to affect your bottom line, how that's going to affect your balance sheet. Because ultimately we're here, everyone wants to talk about wealth, and I keep preaching. Everybody wants to talk about profit, but I keep telling everybody we need to talk about wealth. We're about building wealth. That's what's transferable, not profit.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay. All right, guys. I think that's kind of the end of all the questions here for tonight. Plus, we're approaching kind of an hour and a half. So that was my goal, to kind of keep it there. Guys, at the end of the day here, I talk about the two decisions that you have here. So a lot of you guys watching this presentation and everything right now, and that have gotten through this with us, you guys really have two different options, right? And so you're watching this because you're facing some type of problem here inside of your business. And the truth is that every person that has come in and gotten their numbers structured and organized, I've never heard any of our customers, Lance, and you can confirm, I've never heard any of our customers say, well, yeah, I feel worse off now that I have my numbers structured and organized. Like never, right? Even with the free version of our software, oh, I feel worse off. It's just not going to happen, guys. Now, for some of you that are fearful of what it's going to expose, I'm going to invite you to lean into that, because like I talked about earlier, exposing those problems is where all the growth is going to happen. And that's what's actually going to give you the clarity and the next steps that you need to take inside the operation to plug the leaks, plug the bleeds, whatever problems you're facing inside the operation, and get it to where you want it to be, and ultimately get through this tough year that we know we are going to have. So Lance, any final comments?
No, I joined Legacy Farmer because it's presented a solution to what a huge problem that I had experienced over the last 11 years. And I know that if you go through this process, you put the time and effort into getting your numbers and being clear with your operation, it's going to translate into your bottom line results, which is ultimately what we're doing. If we're passing it off to the next generation or just trying to survive through this one, those are things that are important to do.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll cover that probably in just another webinar that we do there. Just the value in having this level of structure and organization, and how that contributes to a clean transition to the next generation and really setting them up for success.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, all right, guys. Well, thank you very much for joining today's and really this evening's webinar here. We hope it was valuable for you guys. And any additional comments, questions, or anything like that, make sure you text in or shoot us an email there with those things. And also, too, tell us what you want to see. Tell us other topics or things like that you would want us to do a presentation about, because the benefit of working with 300+ family farm operations, if you have a question over a certain situation or you're dealing with something that feels pretty unique, I promise you it isn't. And we most likely have somebody in our network and in our customer base that we've had to deal with that situation there on as well. So please make sure you text in or email us in with any of those questions there, and we'll move forward that way. So, okay, guys, have